3.1 State Finances. So before studying about this report, we will understand the concept of state budget first. So, like the central government has Consolidated Fund of India, every state also has Consolidated Fund of State. So, this actually has two types of budgets. Okay, one is capital budget, the other is revenue budget. Capital budget doesn't help in increasing the assets of the state nor decrease the liabilities. Here, assets means the things which are present to boost the economy, and liability means the things which are present to decrease the economy. So, the capital budget neither change any assets nor liability. So this capital budget is further divided into capital receipts and capital disbursements, or we can also call it capital expenditure. So here, receipts means the money which we are getting, and the disbursements or the expenditure means the money which we are spending. Is it clear, guys? So we will get these capital receipts in the form of recovery of loans, advances given by the state government, proceedings from disinvestments in the public sector units, and new borrowings by the government. Now the second division of capital budget is capital disbursements. Remember guys, capital disbursements or capital expenditure means the same. So capital expenditure means the amount which we are spending. So we spend this capital expenditure in the form of social, economic and general services, and on the other side we spend it on the repayment of loans and the advances taken by the state government. So listen carefully guys, the money which we get by receiving the loans under the capital receipts is spent on the repayment of the loans under the capital disbursements. The advances that are given by the other state governments under the capital receipts is spent on the advances that are taken by our state government. Like this, the money which is received under the capital receipts is spent on the capital expenditure or capital disbursements. So whatever we are getting, we are spending. So is there any change in the assets or any liabilities? No. So that is the reason we call it the capital budget. Okay. So the next part of Consolidated Fund of State is the revenue budget. Here, revenue budget means it can change either assets or liability. So, revenue budget is further divided into revenue receipts and revenue expenditure. Here, receipts means the money which we are getting. So, under revenue receipts, we get money under the grants given by the central government, non-tax revenues and tax revenues. Here, non-tax revenues means the money collected by bills on municipal services, traffic challans and other government services bills. So all these come under the non-tax revenue. And next is capital revenue expenditure. So the money which we get under revenue receipts, we spend on the revenue expenditure. That is by spending money on the general services, social and economic services, grants to the local bodies, etc. So I hope you got a clear idea on this topic. So we will get into this topic. So state finances topic is in news because RBI has released a report, State Finances, a study of budget of 2021 to 2022, and its theme is coping with the pandemic, a third tier dimension. So this report provides information, analysis and assessment of the finances of state governments. So the key highlights of this report are: for the year 2021 to 22, states have budgeted their consolidated gross fiscal deficit to gross domestic product GDP ratio at 3.7%. So in this para, we have to learn three terms. One is fiscal deficit, the other is fiscal surplus and GDP. Okay, so fiscal deficit means, I request you to note down that to clear the further confusion. So here fiscal deficit means the difference between the total revenue and expenditure. So I'll make it more simple. If revenues are less and expenditure is more, then that is called fiscal deficit. If your income is less and your spending is more than that, then it is called fiscal deficit. Is it clear, guys? And on the other side, fiscal surplus means if the income you get is more and your spending is less, that is called fiscal surplus. That means you have extra money. In fiscal deficit, you have to borrow loans, or you have to ask other persons for money because your spending is more. So in that case it is called fiscal deficit, and if your spending is less than your earning, then that is called fiscal surplus. You have huge amount of money, and this is possible in the more in developed countries. So I think fiscal deficit and fiscal surplus is clear for you. So I hope you understood two concepts, that is fiscal deficit and fiscal surplus. Now GDP. GDP means gross domestic product, or in other words, consumption plus investment plus government spending plus net exports. This is called gross domestic product. That means the total market value for goods and services, or the finished goods, is called GDP. Now let's read this point again. For 2021 to 22, states have budgeted their consolidated gross fiscal deficit GFD to gross domestic product GDP ratio at 3.7%. So for the year 2021 to 22, GFD by GDP equals to 3.7%. But in the previous year, that is 2020 to 2021, GFD by GDP is 4.7%. So there is a decrease in fiscal deficit, which means our economy is slowly increasing. So the next point is the combined debt to GDP ratio of states, which stood at 31% at the end of March 2021. It is higher than the target of 20% to be achieved by 2022 to 23 as per the recommendations of FRBM review committee. So here FRBM committee means Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Committee. It is a review committee headed by N.K. Singh. So this committee was set up in the year 2016 May to review the FRBM Act. The main aim of this act is to decrease the fiscal deficit of the country and promote financial stability. So this is about the FRBM committee. So the debt to GDP ratio is 31% by March 2021. But the FRBM committee has recommended 20% target by 2022 to 23. So reaching 20% from 31% debt to GDP ratio might seem a bit difficult. So the 15th Finance Commission expects that the debt to GDP ratio might reach 33.3% in 2022 to 2023 and gradually decline to 32.5% in the 2022 to 2023 year and gradually decline to 32.5% by 2025 to 2026. So this is about the debt to GDP ratio, and the next point is ratio of interest payment to revenue receipts has been increasing in recent years at a steady pace, indicating the erosion debt sustainability. Okay, so here revenue receipts means the money which we get. That means, see, the money which we get is called revenue receipts. That means the interest for the money which we are getting is increasing slowly, and if the money is increasing, we can decrease the debts. So the next is market borrowing might reached 63% by end of March 2022. The shares of National Small Saving Fund NSSF, it is collecting money from small saving schemes. Okay, the loans from the banks and financial institutions and public accounts are slowly decreasing, it seems. So the third tier governments in India, like municipalities, panchayats, etc., have hardly any money because they has used the money in implementing containment strategies, that is hygiene methods, healthcare, quarantining and testing facilities, etc. As they played a frontline role in combating the pandemic, their finances are under severe strain. RBI report has estimated that the local authorities would lose 15 to 25% of revenues in 2021, and this can make a maintenance and services at local level very difficult. So if you observe in the current affairs also, we can see that many local authorities are protesting against the government due to lack of budget sanction for them. So this is about the thing. Next is why understanding state finances is important. First is state finances are important for public capital spending or capital expenditure. 2 by 3rd of India's public expenditure comes from the states. So for employment generation, it is also used. Understanding state finances is used for employment generation. As per RBI reports, states employ 5 times more people than central government. So next is understanding state finances will help to study the national economy, and it also helps to increase the macroeconomic stability. So the key trends in state finances are: the fiscal deficit has been increased from 2.9% of GDP in 2019 to 20 to 4% of GDP in 2020 to 21. You can also refer this tables. Next is the public debt is also increased. So in the year 2011 to 12, it was 17.2% of GDP, but in the year 2021 to 22, it was estimated to be 25.1% GDP. The state's own tax revenue is the largest source of revenue, and it is estimated to be 6.7 of GSDP. GSDP means gross or net state domestic product. Okay, so this is as per RBI report. And the fourth point is the property tax collection by the states is increasing. So the property tax collection is low as 0.2% of GDP. The reasons for such a low property tax collection are undervaluation of property, incomplete property tax record, and inefficient administration for low property tax revenue as per the 15th Finance Commission. So even the state owned power distributions are in losses. So these are the key trends in state finances. The issues with the state finances: the state's share of taxes has been reduced by central government. So the 15th Finance Commission recommended to give 41% share to states for the year 2021 to 26. And the reason for such a decrease in the state share is due to cesses and surcharges collected by the central government. Here, the cesses means additional tax collected by the central government, and the surcharges means extra amount that should be paid for something. And the share of this cess and surcharge in gross tax revenue is 10 to 15% of GTR in the year 2011 to 20 and 35% during 2015 to 20. Other reason for problems in state finances is the reduction of share of united funds to states. So it is untied funds, okay. The other reason is the reduction in the share of untied funds to states. Here, untied funds means the funds that are used for development processes other than schemes. Okay, so even the share of those untied funds for states are reduced by central government. The other reason for decrease in state finances is lower capital expenditure. The state has spent only less. So this act is good on one side, like it saves money, but on the other side, spending less money also leads to low economic development. So without increasing the farmers' income, many states has announced the farm loan waivers, which will excuse me, which will strain the state finance. And due to lockdowns, liquor, fuel, and real estates are closed, and this has led to decrease in state finances. And because the state finances is majorly dependent on these three sectors, so all these are the reasons for the fall of state finances. So to reduce the state's financial burden, center has taken a few steps to support states. They are: first is the center gave permission to increase their fiscal deficit from 3% of GSDP. GSDP means gross state domestic product. Okay, so the center gave permission to increase their fiscal deficit from 3% of GSDP to 5% of GSDP in 2020 to 21. That means by implementing one nation, one ration card, ease of doing business, urban local body, and power distribution, all these government programs, by doing all these government programs, the center gave financial support to increase the state government spendings, especially during the pandemic situation. And next is the center has also provided special assistance on capital expenditure. Here, capital expenditure means repayment of loans, advances to state governments, and social and economic services. All this come under capital expenditure. So, the center has provided special assistance for capital expenditure for the year 2021 to 22. That means the states will be provided interest-free loans up to 15,000 crore in 2021 to 22, and the money should be repaid after 50 years. So now the way forward is the FRBM Act, that is the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management should be restructured. By the financial problems arised due to the pandemic situation, new framework should be brought to achieve financial stability. Next is the public liabilities, like the public debts, the loans that are to be paid, etc., must be disclosed by the states. So that should be open and transparent. So all the debts and loans should be transparent. Next is the state's financial policy should be made in such a way that the states should become stable in all financial conditions. And next is by undertaking reforms in discoms, the liability should be turned into an asset by improving the financial health of the discoms. Next is an independent fiscal council should be established as per the recommendations of the 15th Finance Commission. Next, the expenditure or the spending should be productive by building proper healthcare facilities, educational infrastructure, etc., which leads to economic development in future. So, as per the RBI recommendations, the third tier government should also be strengthened.